Hello, we have another release of pjsProfileBars. Hasn't been so long since the last update, but this is another update. A significant amount of improvements, so it is a recommended update for everybody. There shouldn't be any breaking changes. There are a couple of very minor configuration options you might need to reset due to a few changes regarding text centering, things like that. Please read the release notes. The release notes are on the website at the usual address. So there are a large number of changes, so please skip through those, but nothing that should break anything. So this is a sample of one of the improved views. This is a split buy-sell ladder view with VPOC coloring, imbalance coloring. The plot here is one of the new plots that's available, and the plot here is another one. This plot here is actually the session VWAP, so there's no need for a separate VWAP indicator on your chart anymore, and of course NinjaTrader doesn't come as standard with VWAP, so that's a full session VWAP, the 24-hour session, not the RTH session. This plot here looks similar to the prior VPOC per bar VPOC plot, but is in fact slightly different. It is a per bar VWAP. I don't see that very often in many other indicators, but it is used as an institutional performance metric for distributing and accumulating larger amounts of contracts. So I've actually found it fairly useful so far in the short time I've been looking at it. I think it's something that will fit into my sort of trading view quite well. The two options for it are the plot, which you can see here, and if you can turn the plot off. All of these options have been added to the new right-click context menu. You can just enable them in real time like that. No refreshing of the chart or anything, won't affect your data. There's also this little discrete marker if you don't want the plot, and that just highlights the exact level in each bar that the VWAP is. Most of the time it's going to be close to the VPOC. This is a fairly short time frame chart, but in slightly longer time frames where you have multiple distributions where it's imbalanced, the VWAP could in fact be fairly different, and it kind of acts in this case almost like a trend line. But obviously the VWAP is an important metric. Larger players are certainly paying attention to it within these time frames, and hopefully this might
sell imbalance SPX 500.
Excuse me, real-time trade alerts going off there. Might provide you with a little more insight at times. Obviously the session view up there as well, you can see we came down, bounced off that. Most people have that on their charts, but at least you can get rid of another indicator off your chart now. It's optionally enabled, so you actually have to go into the settings and turn on calculations for VWAP. As with most of the options, anything that might affect performance in the slightest is off. There isn't really much overhead in calculating the VWAP because we're already handling the tick data in real time anyway, but you must turn the option to calculate them on if you want to display them. There are a bunch of enhancements with regards to fonts. Some of the fonts can now be changed slightly in that you can choose bold or extra bold for things like VPOCs and imbalances, besides the coloring to make them stand out more. The layout with sort of pixel buffering and things has been improved just to tidy up the visibility. There have been some new views with regards to delta histograms. If we turn off the split buy sells, for instance here, sorry, wrong option. Turn on these, you can in fact turn on the delta histograms. So I've got the candle on there so you can't see it very well, but the histogram has the original option of being within the bars, which is the compact view, but you can also have it protruding to the left, which means it basically acts as a separate subchart. Tidy this up. Obviously, delta view doesn't apply in split buy sell because you already have it. The data grid has been tidied up. NinjaTrader snaps all drawings to a pixel grid, which would mean at times, even though you have, say, 100 bars on the screen, and you'll notice this with standard bars as well on charts, occasionally they jump a pixel to the left or a pixel to the right. That's because sort of fractional pixel positioning isn't supported in NinjaTrader. So although the amount of pixels across the screen may not be evenly divisible rather by the number of bars. So every X bars, if you want to be incredibly correct about it, you have to look to adjust your bar positioning by a pixel or so backwards and forwards to cater for that if you want the chart to look very nice. NinjaTrader standard bars don't do that, but pjsProfileBars now does. It might have been visible to some users on the data grid before, where you have a very, very slightly thicker line in between your margins. So everything now, bars, data grid, all the drawings should be pixel perfect. The delta candles now have a feature taken from my PJS Heikenashi bars, which I've always loved the look of, and I think you'll agree. These now have a much nicer visual display. The wick size on the delta bars can now be set. The default was 1 pixel. I've got it shown as 2 here. You can change that to whatever you like depending on how large you have your chart, and of course they fall back to bars along with everything else if you need to. The wicks had a tendency to fade out.
Sell imbalance SPX 500.
Excuse me. The wicks had a tendency to fade out if the delta was very high or very low and then reversed almost all the way to the bottom, occasionally making them more difficult to see. So the wicks actually now take their opacity from the delta high or low, so that you can always actually see them. Font sizing has been improved. Fractional font sizes are now supported, so the change in font size, as you'll see there, is
Sell imbalance SPX 500.
Sorry, I should have turned those off. Is significantly smoother. Font sizes will vary with vertical scrolling and horizontal scrolling depending on the width in the cells. It's never absolutely perfect if you try and make the bars too small, but it does work very well and significantly better than the prior version. There is a scale factor within the settings in a new section called X tweaks right at the bottom of the settings page, which enable you to change the scale factor for the horizontal and vertical if you have a screen that for some reason the default font scaling doesn't fit your requirements. so feel free to fiddle with that. Gauges have been improved, the volume gauge in particular, the internals of that have been reworked. The prior install unfortunately defaulted to on-bar update, so the metrics it was gathering as a baseline weren't really being gathered. They were in my install, but I had it set to a different setting, and unfortunately it went out with the default was on-bar closed. So that's been changed. The internal calculations there have also been improved, so the volume gauge should be much more useful now. As I say, the right-click context menu, there are a significant number of new options in here. All of these are real-time, so no going into settings, reloading the chart every time you change something. Text alignment option, there's an extra centered option now to center, which will suit different bar types. But you pick the one which works best for you. Justified on split view is probably the best option. So I'm just looking through the change list to see if there are any other things. Yes, in the algo conditions for your own custom alert expressions, and has been added, so you can now combine conditions using or and. Not in the same line, but it does enable you to say something like, if the last bar was greater than the current bar and the prior bar to that was greater than the prior bar to that, for instance. Of course you can mix in or as well. There are a couple of new additions to the variables you can use in the expressions as well, in that the bars ago is now supported for these options, which means you can say that the VPOC of the current bar is greater than the VPOC of the prior bar, for instance. So feel free to make use of those. Min candle opacity, yeah, that was when the volume opacity was enabled. The candles would actually fade with the last opacity to be used. Sorry, that was actually a minor bug. So the candles will still vary with overall volume in their opacity, but you can set a minimum opacity for the candle, which means they always stay reasonably visible. Data grid alignment option. You had the option to center the bars on the original native bars, or in some views begin the bar at the center. If you're overlaying different third-party indicators on the chart or in separate panels in conjunction with pjsProfileBars, some of those third-party tools might align differently. There is now the option to align the data grid either to the start of the bar or to the center of the bar, which will make sure everything lines up with third-party tools. Yeah, the trade markers, the circles, you can now alter the border size. There is a border size multiplier. It will make them stand out that bit more if you want to make sure you don't miss them. The other thing is, previously they were printed over the profile, which hid the numbers and sometimes made them slightly more difficult to see. No matter what view you are using, they now should be presented over the center of the candle, whether that candle is in the center or offset to the side. It does make them much more visible and useful. Performance improvements, there we go. Yes, little minor bug fix there. If you didn't have delta candles at all before, it was unfortunately because the wick width had defaulted to 0, which meant no wick. So if you don't see delta wicks with the delta bars candles on the grid, just check the wick width. Yep, the font options here. text alignment options for the fonts. They have been combined into one single drop-down option in the settings, rather than the 2 or now 3 checkboxes that would have been required before. That's makes much more sense, much more reliable, because you can only select one setting at a time. But it did mean removing the old 3 settings. So if you'd customized your font, you will need to perhaps just go and reselect your text alignment option. Gap between bars, yeah, you can customize the gap between the actual bars as well now. Just trying to see if there's anything significant that needs further explanation. Reduced numbers is a nice one. You can see down here all of the numbers. There's one. Most of these are below 1,000. But if you have reduced numbers on, like here, you see that it says 1.1k, so obviously 1,100 and something. That's obviously a lot shorter than the big number. It does tend to make it easy to assimilate, especially when things are moving fast, and you can generally get as much comprehension from 1.1k as 1,136, for instance. Do you really need to know the 36 contracts? So it just reduces the amount of text on the screen, makes it quicker to actually assimilate the information. Again, that's optionally turned on. It will take place for pretty much all of the numbers in the grid if you have it enabled. Extra bold for imbalances, I think I already mentioned that. Candle space buffer multiplier. This is a change from the prior version, which had fixed spacing between the candles and the profiles themselves. Now, once you've set the candle width, if you set the candle buffer space multiplier, it will move the profiles away or into the candle. You can even set that as 0, so the candle is in the center and the profiles are drawn from the center out, or you can increase it to get more space around the candle, whichever you prefer, but it's much more flexible. Delta histogram we mentioned. Relative delta sizing or scaling has changed very slightly, just to improve the distribution of the opacities and size of the bars when in delta mode. It is an improvement. Yeah, you can now turn off varying opacities on the delta candles here as well, optionally if you want. This is a incredibly useful function, not just for pjsProfileBars, but for charts on NinjaTrader in general. Pretty much everyone will have experienced that when you have a chart, particularly in a fast-moving market, you've got 2 options in NinjaTrader. Hit it to fixed, or automatic rather, scaling, in which case as NinjaTrader gets a spike in volatility, your chart tends to do this and become unreadable, or you're left with manually trying to scroll the chart up and down. You'll see mine scrolled itself back there, because when you have track view in fixed scale, enabled, you can set a buffer at the top and for the bottom of the screen. As price tends to approach that buffer, what will happen is what you just saw. The screen will automatically move down, but it will do so without messing with your fixed scale, which means everything stays readable, but at the same time price stays on the chart in a place where you can see it. For instance, if we were to go all the way down now, nothing would happen until we got back down here, and then the chart would adjust up. It moves up a few ticks at a time, a couple of ticks at a time in fact, just to try and prevent too many screen jumps. But that feature in itself is probably worth the cost of this indicator in my opinion. because it's something that's been requested on NinjaTrader probably for, well, since version 7, never materialized. There did used to be a great third-party utility that did it, but with all the political upheaval in the world, it disappeared. So now we have an alternative in pjsProfileBars. Voice alerts can be enabled and disabled from the quick menu. Volume dial, average calculations we did, OBV minor shade, VWAPs we covered, draw plots, yeah, these plots that were drawn before, well, it was previously just the VPOC lines before, they could look a little bit jagged on some screens because there was no aliasing used in this indicator unless you had it turned on in the settings. That's for performance reasons, and if you turn on aliasing, these types of bars actually don't always look good. Sharp tends to be better, but for lines you want it on, so aliasing is now on regardless of your setting, but just for the plots. It just means you get a nice smooth plot instead of a plot with any jagged edges. And then the last thing is just the plots have been added to the menu, which I think I already covered. So that's about it. Sorry for blabbering on for so long. A lot of work has gone into this release. It's incredibly efficient. Performance is better than it has ever been. I think the visuals look better than they've ever been, and I really hope you like it. Thank you.